elegant, successful, beautiful, classy, unique, purpose, empowered, strong, overcomer, free, powerful. She rises. Hey there, and welcome to Successful.
Beautiful.
And
I'm Natalie,
I'm Nikki.
I'm Tonyeka.
and we are so excited that you have joined us again today.
Yes.
We are so looking forward to this show. If you have not gone on and liked, subscribed, or shared our podcast, please be sure to do that. We would appreciate the support. So last time, ladies, we were talking about mental health, and Nikki informed us that we didn't have time. But we got time today.
Yes.
So today we are going to pick up kind of where we left off the last time with the First Lady. And we're going to be discussing mental health, our mental health and the mental health of others that were around us. So let's jump in, ladies.
Let's do it.
All right. So, pardon me. So when we talk about mental health, we're gonna dive deep again today. I guess we just keep going deep.
Yes.
This whole life that we've had was deep.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're gonna just remain there in the deep water
Yes.
and share the things that we know that we need to share and are able and willing to share with you guys, because we want to help you. We want to inform you and want to help those that you might know that you might share some additional information with after listening to us. Okay. So mental health,
Mental health.
our well-being in our minds, our the care and keeping of us in our thinking. That's what we're talking about today. All right. So who wants to start with this mental health space
Oh,
that we are discussing today? So we're going to talk about our mental health initially,
mm-hmm.
right? So what were some of the things that you know that you experienced or that you felt mentally
Mm-hmm.
when you were in the role of a first lady?
I'll say I neglected myself.
Mm.
I was so focused on my children, ministry, husband, that I really did not even take the time to evaluate myself and kind of where I was mentally.
Do you think you even knew that you needed to?
No. And I will say I felt oftentimes all over the place
Yeah.
because I was doing so many things. And in addition to the responsibilities of mom, wife, first lady, I still am a professor. So I work full time. So having to balance all of that was a struggle.
Mhm.
And it was, from the time I got up to the time I lay down, I was always doing
Yeah.
and going and moving
Mhm.
and driving, and it was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you or did y'all feel like that's what you were supposed to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mother's mother, wife's wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And in addition to that, in ministry, sometimes it's hard to ask for help,
Yeah.
whether it's help with the kids
Mhm.
or therapy, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
I think it's hard because you may not know you need help.
Yeah.
And you just may be embarrassed, or you may not know who you can trust to
Yeah.
help you.
Yeah, for sure. What you think, T?
I would say I stayed in survival mode, kind of
Mhm.
like what Nikki said. You
Mhm.
did everything it took to make things happen, and neglecting me.
Yeah.
So I didn't take care of me. So that means including if I need to take medicine due to the high blood pressure of everything causing my blood pressure to go up.
Mhm.
I didn't take my medicine. I didn't do that self-care that needed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even think about the term self-care. Yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely didn't do that either. I suffered with depression, and I didn't realize that I did.
Wow.
You know, I don't know about anxiety as much, but depression for sure. You know, and you saw it on me. You know, I was just worn out, if you will, and I felt it.
Yeah.
You know, I was young and felt old internally. You know, yeah, did all of the things for everybody. You were saying, you know, not necessarily knowing how to ask for help or knowing that you needed to ask for help. I don't know that I thought that I could.
Yeah.
You know, because of the role and the expectations, like we talked last time,
Yeah.
the expectations that I had placed on myself. I didn't think that I was supposed to. Like I was supposed to be able to
Right.
do all of that stuff because I'm anointed by God. You know, so I spiritualize so many things, man. As I think back on that, I get on my own nerves. I'm like, girl,
Yeah.
you know, you are a human being,
Right.
you know, in the spiritual existence, but still, yeah, I just felt like I was supposed to be able to do it all and tried to do it all.
And you're not by yourself. I think that is so common, not only for women, but especially women in ministry.
Yeah, for sure.
Just you said that, you know, you were anointed by God, you know, and I think we all kind of feel like that. And because we are anointed, you know, we are empowered to be superhuman.
Mhm.
And that is not what that means.
That is not what that means at all.
Absolutely.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I would say that being in church, oftentimes, when we talk about mental health, for some reason, oftentimes church people are afraid of that word, or
Yeah.
it's like a bad word. Like
Mhm.
you're depressed. Oh, don't say that. Don't
Mhm.
you know? Don't even use that
You
word.
don't have faith.
You don't have faith.
Mhm.
You're not believing God,
Mhm.
and it's not
It's not
that
at all.
exactly. If the doctor give you a diagnosis of cancer, we can still say, I believe God is going to heal me.
Absolutely.
But the truth of the matter is,
I need to go take this chemo and radiation or whatever treatment might be necessary. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's disheartening oftentimes in the church
Mhm.
that we don't take mental health as serious
Yeah.
as it should be taken.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all know this is my wheelhouse. I kind of wasn't expecting us to go down this path, but yes. If we can be more mindful of our mental health, I think I can say that every other area in our life
Oh,
would
my
be more
God.
balanced
Oh.
and healthier. You know, of course, God first, but He wants us to be well. I would above all things that you would prosper and be in health, even as your
Yes.
soul prospers.
Yes.
You know, so our minds have to be submitted to the Lord. Yes,
Absolutely.
submission can look a number of ways, though, when we talk about our minds being submitted to the Lord. You know, of course, submitted in prayer and, you know, studying His Word and things of that nature. But it also can be you submitting yourself to the work with the therapist, the work with the psychiatrist, who is a medical doctor that prescribes medications in order to help. And everybody doesn't need to be on medication forever.
Right.
There are some people that need medication for a season, for a period, for a time. And then there are those that have some diagnosis that lasts a lot longer, and some it is for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
And that's okay.
Right.
You know, if you're getting the help that you need to. Excuse me. It doesn't make us lesser than.
That's
It doesn't make us weak. It doesn't make us just not able to handle life. It means none of that.
Right.
But if we're not handling our mental health, then you can be weak and you can feel less than and operate lower than you ought to,
Right.
Yes.
because you're not taking care of you.
Right.
So I guess this is a challenge, you know, to take care of your mental health. And again, as first ladies, when we were in those roles, you heard the things that we were saying, how we felt weighed down
Right.
by all of the stuff.
Yes.
Because for me, I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to do it on my own, you know, or feeling like, you know, you can't tell somebody else about
Right.
it or whatever. But you absolutely can and do. Don't try to do this by yourself. We are created for relationship and for community.
Absolutely.
So operate in that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think too, being an African American woman in our community, I think therapy and counseling is not, and it's not even an option.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, it's frowned upon. And when you couple that with like what Tonyeka said with being a Christian and being in church, I think that it's that we get judged for. I don't think it's like that now, but I think it's gotten better. But the perception of needing therapy was frowned upon, and not really embraced or encouraged in our culture,
For sure.
especially in church.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I do agree that it is better. It is certainly not where it ought to be, though.
That's right.
Because the
right.
church ought to be the first place to say, hey, take care of you.
Yes.
And taking care of you looks like this.
That's right.
Have a relationship with the Lord. Make sure that you're eating right. Make sure that you're exercising. I mean, the church ought to be encouraging and pushing and urging the body to be healthy.
Yes.
Not just come and listen to this word,
Yes.
Right.
but come listen to the word. This is how you apply the word in every area of your life,
Right.
not just so that you can get more money and get the job and get the man and get the woman and all of those things, the tangible things, but so that your life is healthy in every aspect,
Yes.
So yes.
And I think, sorry.
No, go ahead. I think also when we talk about being healthy, as you just stated, a healthy state of mind, oftentimes, the things that happen to us, we respond in ways that we normally would not have. And if we were in a better place, for example, if we were in therapy or if we were getting the help that we needed and taking care of ourselves, then maybe we wouldn't have responded that way. Maybe it wouldn't have been so far-fetched. Maybe I wouldn't have went off like you know what I'm saying? And then labeled as crazy because now I'm acting a certain way. I just didn't get the help that I needed, and now I'm about to explode. And so things that happen to us could push you over.
Yeah.
And I've always said that's why I believe it's important to not pick with people or jab with people. You never know where a person is, and the thing that you do to pick with them may just tip them over.
Be their tipping
so
point.
just be kind. Be kind. You never know. And it's not that I'm being mean. I've just been crushed.
Yeah.
And not gotten and pushed.
And not gotten the help.
And not gotten the help that I needed.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I think with churches, I think as a body, we need to be more holistic and look at the entire person.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Mind, body, and spirit. Mind, and I think that needs to start with the head. Yeah. Because pastors are leaders. And I think if it was a push for that from the top, that it would definitely trickle down and more people would take the time to invest in themselves and do the things that they need to do to be holistic, healthy, completely, mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Completely.
But how many pastors?
I think that there are a lot more. I can speak to that from a professional side of things, because I've got a lot more invitations from churches to come and speak in regards to mental health or whatnot. What I do find interesting, though, is that a lot of times it's coupled with women's ministry. I think that's very interesting. So, of course, me being me, I circle back and say, so what are we going to do about these men? Because we all clearly have mental health. And let me speak to that really quickly. Again, I wasn't expecting to go down this path. When I hear people talk about mental health, I sometimes hear them speak in regards to like isolated spaces of our mental health. Our mental health is consuming of every area of our life, if you will. We have mental health in our spiritual life. We have mental health in our physical life. You know what I mean? Because it's based on the way that we think about a thing, and that's how we will act or behave in that area of our life. So we have to make sure, again, that our mental health is cared for properly. Everybody doesn't necessarily need to be in therapy long term, but everybody needs a therapist.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because we just need somebody that we can go to and bounce things off of to give a bit of guidance, that can give a bit of guidance and things of that nature that have no emotional investment in your life, that just speaks to whatever it is that you present. I'm not sure if I've said this on the show before or not, but when clients come and they don't share the whole story or the truth, I can only work with what it is that you give me.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so we can elaborate on this lie because for me it's true because I don't have a reason to believe that you're gonna lie to me. You know, but if you do, you do, and that's on you. It's your money.
Right.
But we want to work on the things that are legitimate.
Mhm.
You know, so the actual change can be made in the life. And so we were saying, Nikki, that that the discussion about mental health and people being more receptive to mental health really does start from the leadership in ministries. So again, I think that I have encountered a lot more pastors that are more open to it. There may be still some pushback on possible medication or something like that. It may not be a complete embrace of it all, but the conversation is at least being had a lot more. So I believe churches need to have resources, like a list of therapists or a list of agencies that you can refer to, like whoever the administrative person is. When somebody calls your church, they need to be able to answer that phone with information, or they go to your website. There should be places on your website that lead people to certain places. 988 should be on your website, which is a suicide crisis and suicide lifeline. 911 should be on your website. I know we tend to know it, but it should still be there so they can see it. Things of that nature. So yeah, okay. I'll get off my
And-
soapbox. No.
And the counselor doesn't always have to be the pastor and the first lady.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Yes, because clearly,
As we sit here, they didn't need to be the counselor. Yeah. I say this often as well when it comes to that, that a lot of times the body is expecting a pastor or his wife to be something that they are not.
Yes.
If it's a spiritual matter, okay. However, if it's something that has to do with your mental health, and the leadership needs to know the difference.
yes.
If you are not a therapist, you are not a therapist.
That part.
Simple as that.
Mhm.
You can be anointed to preach the word. You can be anointed to give a word of knowledge, you know, all of those things. But if you are not a therapist, you are not a therapist. And there's so much liability to that.
Mhm.
You know, speaking into areas of someone's life that you don't know what to do with, you don't know what the next step should be for them.
Mhm. Right.
Don't try to be the therapist.
Right.
Have resources
Mhm.
and refer.
Mhm.
That'll save you a whole lot of heartache.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. I wasn't expecting us to take that turn. In my mind, that was going to go a different way today, but I'm glad that we did.
Mhm.
Okay. So for you guys in the organizations or maybe the fellowships that your churches were in, did you guys talk about mental health at all in those spaces?
No.
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 I don't recall.
I believe they did a little bit. I don't want to speak to what extent.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't recall that fully.
Mhm.
I don't remember there being, I will say this, I don't remember there being this obvious discussion in regards to it. I can definitely say that. If it was something that may have been discussed, you know, sidebar,
Mhm.
then potentially. Like I know the ex and I would go and we would talk to our bishop about marital stuff,
Mhm.
you know, but he's not a therapist,
Right.
Right.
you know, so he could only give the guidance that he could give.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Okay.
Can I say, I just wanted to add one more thing. Speaking of the push, I know in the circle in which we were in, the push was more for making sure you take a day off, you know, because when it comes to ministry, it can be 7 days, 8 days a week, actually. And so there was a push to have that time for the pastor, you know, and maybe even a date night for you and your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
But the push for seeking a counselor or having a therapist on well, I don't want to say on retainer, but
You can.
okay, on retainer
You can.
was not a common discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least that I was privy to.
And so I think I want to take a turn here if we can, and y'all can reel me back in if we need to. I just started to think about the mental health of leaders in ministry, and when it is not something that is discussed as often as it should be, and they are struggling, you know, with whatever it is that they're struggling with, and there's no one, and there's nothing around them to like guide them in a direction of help. So then they wear it, and they wear it, and wear it, and it wears them down, you know, in so many ways. I heard somebody say that Sunday afternoons and Mondays are the most vulnerable times for pastors because they've delivered a word, you know, and hopefully depleted themselves of themselves and whatever it is that the Lord has given to them. So they are opened to anything, you know. So that's when they really have to be covered, you know. And if they have not dealt with their mental health, that's also when those things rise up, you know, and become very consumptive in those times. And then the Monday comes, and it's maybe their off day if they're full-time ministry or whatnot. And then you're going to work, and then all of the things can happen, you know. And then Tuesday comes and settles down again. They're doing business on Tuesday, and then Wednesday maybe Bible study or something, you know, so they're back up again, but not as high as they were on Sunday because, as we said, the Sunday show, as we talked about last time, and then, you know, just all the days, it's just a cycle that they go back through, but never inserting help.
Right.
You know, so the cycle just continues, and then they keep getting pulled down into this whirlwind, you know, getting sucked into the funnel of things. So yeah. Okay. So I think we're going to take a turn now.
Okay.
So we wanted to kind of give a disclaimer, maybe, I think I want to say, in regards to this portion of our discussion, because we are now wanting to discuss the mental health of others that were around us and how it impacted us, how their mental health impacted us. Not to say that we are minimizing or diminishing at all, because it was real, because we experienced it. And not even to say that we were the ones to have diagnosed, because we weren't, not even me, were the ones to diagnose or say, this is, you know, what you have or what you are labeled with or whatnot. Not even that, but we experienced these things. So we want to share that before we get going. So we had a very deep discussion. We always do before we have our show. We have really good talks. So we had a very deep discussion in regards to their mental health, the ex-husband's mental health, and there were some materials that we wanted to share and define some things for you as we dive deeper into this discussion. So, Nikki.
Yes, and I wanted to say, for me, I was so nervous and am nervous about sharing. One, because my children, you know, will maybe look at this and they don't have the same experience as I do, because to him, he's their father.
Right.
But to me, he was my husband for 23 years. So obviously our views are different.
Yeah.
And so it was, you know, a little, what's the word I want to say? I was just a little apprehensive. And even in that, still wanting to cover and protect him, my son's father, and his image, and not really share, but, you know, but why not?
Yeah.
Why
and
not?
no one is helped if we don't share.
Right. Because part of this podcast, what we want to do is help. We want to encourage.
Absolutely.
We want people to be healed. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have something you wanted to share that?
No, I like what Nikki said. I
Yeah.
feel the same way.
Yeah.
That was a great point that the children see them as the father. They can't speak to
Them as husband.
them as husbands because
Yeah.
they were our husbands
Mhm.
and their dad.
Yeah.
So I like that point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's not scary because it's not true. It's
Yeah.
scary because you know that your kids are going to listen.
Right.
It may, and just not knowing, I guess.
How it will impact them.
Mm-hmm.
But this is my reality.
Absolutely.
Right.
This is my reality. So even, just that,
Yeah.
it's my reality
Your reality.
and not theirs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just taking that in for a moment, that this is our reality.
Mhm.
We lived these lives, and have overcome or are overcoming
Mhm.
in that space.
Mhm.
So, okay. Yeah, so we're going to talk about some heavy things today. So, Nikki, you had some information, some materials
Yes.
that we talked about.
Yes.
And we want you to share
So I
the
got to
good,
put on the professors.
the good
Put
stuff.
on the professors.
And they're cute.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, the professors. Okay. Okay, so I'll just start with myself and my journey. I've mentioned this before that I have a therapist and I have been in therapy for several years now.
Mhm.
And in going through this journey and getting help for myself, my therapist recommended homework.
Mhm.
And so for homework, I did a lot of reading.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to share a couple of things. All the books that I have that I have with me today, she recommended. All of them except for one are Christian authors, so I appreciated that. In my search for a therapist, I looked for, well, I don't know if I really looked for a Christian therapist, but
I
because she
didn't.
was,
But go ahead.
she was a referral. She came highly recommended.
Mm-hmm.
So she told me that she wanted me to order these books. So the first book I have is on self-worth.
Yeah.
And in our first session, or one of our earlier sessions, she asked me to give her a little bit of information about myself. So I gave, excuse me, my name. I'm a mom of 3, a wife. At the time I was married, I'm a wife. I'm a professor. But outside of that, there was really no depth to Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see anything wrong with that,
Mhm.
defining myself with labels of mom, wife, and
Of what you
professor.
do.
But obviously, there's more to me than that.
Absolutely.
So she had me read this book. The title is Self Worth Discover Your God Given Worth. The author is June Hunt.
Mhm.
So in this book, I thought it was very interesting because the author starts out by defining a couple of things. So she defines worth. And she says, worth signifies the value, merit, or significance of a person or thing. Self-worth is the belief that your life has value and significance.
Mhm.
So the sad part that I will share about me was outside of my roles as mom, wife, professor, I didn't really see the significance of Nikki.
Mm.
And I hate to admit that, but it's true.
Yeah.
And so even in that, self-worth is very different from self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
So the author defines esteem. She says to esteem means to set on a high value, to set a high value on. And then she says to have self-esteem is to respect or have high regard for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say this, for me, coming into my marriage, I had rejection wounds because I never had a relationship with my biological father.
Mm-hmm.
So I come as my true self, show up ready to be married with this wound. And I think for years, even prior to marriage, I did struggle with self-worth and self-esteem. And I have made since then some strides in those areas. Still working on it though.
Yeah.
That's great.
So this read was very interesting, and I gleaned a lot from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that in regards to self-worth, I think I lost that
Absolutely.
in marriage.
Absolutely.
I think I valued myself. I had a really good relationship with my dad, and still do. I talked about him on another show. I call him right now, and he would talk on this podcast. I had that, but I lost that in marriage. I lost it in marriage and had to rebuild and figure me out again and learn to value me and to esteem myself highly. Yeah, that's good. I like June Hunt.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, what else you got?
Okay. So I just want to say that yes, I also lost that in my marriage, and the journey has been rebuilding, rediscovering, and learning to value myself all over again.
Yeah. And identifying you, because when you were saying then that you described yourself as just what it is that you did. Do you remember our first episode when we were telling who we are? We talked about who we are, not just what we do.
Right.
And we were very intentional about separating what we do from who we are. Yeah. Which says that we've figured this out, ladies, at least, or figuring it out maybe still in some areas. But
Absolutely.
we know who we are. Yes.
An amazing woman.
An amazing woman. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yes.
Very good.
So next up, we have boundaries.
Have boundaries, please.
Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, all of them were game changers for me, but this one was really a game changer. Mainly because when my therapist spoke to me about boundaries, I think sometimes that has a negative connotation, but since I'm a scientist, she put it in terminology that I could understand and appreciate. So first she mentioned when God created the heavens and the earth, he made water and he made land.
Yes.
So land and water don't mix. There's land and then there's water. So there's a boundary.
Yeah.
Then she talked about the human body, all these systems of the body that you have. And yes, they work together, but clearly your lungs don't interfere with your intestines because they're boundaries.
Yeah.
So when she said that, I was like, oh, I get it. So I'll start with the definition of the boundary. And the definition is boundaries are established limits. That's it. Just established limits. Very, very simple, but yet so profound.
Yes.
So as I'm reading this book, it then instructs me a little bit further into it to check off on this list. And it says that basically checklist for boundaryless, meaning if you check these things, you do not have boundaries. And I was like, okay, so let's take a look at the list. And as I'm going down the list, like I am reluctant to ask for help, or I dread losing the love and affection of others, or I perform favors for others even when I know I shouldn't. I feel like I must seek the opinions of others before acting on a decision. So as I'm going down this list, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I do not have boundaries.
Did not have boundaries.
So then I said, okay, why don't I have boundaries? Why is it that I have a hard time saying no? Why don't I set boundaries? And then it was as if June Hunt, who is the author, was living in my house. Because this is what she said. And I was like, we didn't even talk. Why is this in your book? And I felt that way about all the books. But it says, if you struggle with broken boundaries, you may have excessive fear of disappointing others, receiving criticism, or losing love. Then the light bulb went off because my fear was disappointing my husband at the time I was married. So I wanted to say yes, so that he would be happy. And so that was a struggle for me. And then I learned with boundaries, the moment you receive pushback from people when you set boundaries, those are the very people who benefited from you not having boundaries.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 And I was talking to a client just yesterday about boundaries, and I was sharing with them that when you set your boundaries are like it's like a whole system. It has to be communicated that this is the boundary, this is the limit, this is what cannot happen or what can or whatnot. That has to be communicated. That has to be reinforced if the person crosses that. And then it has to be, you have to stand on it, you know, and then there has to be a consequence,
Right.
you know, because if there's no consequence, then it's always going to be assumed that, oh, I can cross
okay.
that, you know, it doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
And I know for me, those were crossed often
Mhm.
because I definitely didn't have boundaries in marriage. You know, there were certain things I would say, there were certain things that I would say, you know, I don't like this. I don't want you to do this. The response would be, or what?
Wow.
Yeah. So then that felt threatening to me,
Yes.
you know, so I was like internally kind of like, I don't know
Right.
what. I would just hope that you just wouldn't do it,
Right.
you know, or say it or
Mhm.
whatnot. But I got that.
And it's
Wow.
so disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
I had the same situation. There was a situation, and I said, if this happens again, I don't like this, and I won't be able to continue. We won't be able to continue like this if this happens again. And I was told, is that a threat?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that when you love someone, that's not how you respond.
Mm-hmm.
I love you and I respect you. So I'm sorry that this hurt, or what can I do to make, we work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not a bullying game.
Yeah.
And so that's a bullying tactic
Mm-hmm.
to say, is that a threat?
Yeah. What do y'all think about this thought? If you feel safe with a person, that boundaries may not be necessary. What do y'all think about that thought? I haven't flushed that out. It just kind of came to mind. The boss.
I think I disagree with that.
Okay. Boundaries are always
I
necessary.
think boundaries,
think
even
so
if
too.
they're small boundaries,
Yes.
or not, what is it, like the draw the line in the sand kind of a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with everyone, there should be boundaries,
Right.
even in friendships
Yes.
and all types of relationships, even with children.
Mm-hmm. So I think this is where the thought was going, in that if you are in a safe relationship, then the person will honor you as a person and won't necessarily cross. But I guess they have to. I'm not gonna process this whole thought through the show, but that's just that's how I think. So yeah, I do tend to agree with that. Okay, so
But I know where you were
boundaries.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about that over lunch.
Yes. So I will add one more caveat to this with boundaries. When my son's father left, that time was very, what's the word, sensitive, because I was trying to, going from from a 2-parent household to a 1-parent household. So I'm trying to be all the things to my children. And so one of the things that my kids like to do is watch anime. And so on the weekends, when I tell y'all, we would sit and watch like 100 hours of anime, but I'm trying to show up and be there for my children and bond with them and, come into their world. So as I'm talking to my therapist about this, she says, well, you can limit the episodes and just watch 1 or 2. I was like, really?
Wow.
That's the thing? She said, boundary.
Yeah.
Holy smoke.
Yeah.
So that was a revelation for me, So even with my children, I have boundaries. So now when we watch anime shows, they're like, okay, Mom, how many episodes? Because I've told them, it's just 1 or 2 because I still need time for me.
For you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me, when I worked for someone else, I would come home and I told the girls, I just need 10 minutes. Just give me 10 minutes because I am an introvert that is required to extrovert. Mm. And I need 10 solid minutes to just be by myself without anybody asking me any questions, whether that means I'm going and sitting on my bed, laying in the bed, sitting in the middle of the floor. It doesn't matter, just whatever I needed to do. I just need 10 minutes. And then I come back out, and whether I was ready or not, but, I come back out and do whatever it was I had to do at that point. Yeah. Okay. Okay, what else does Dr. Hunt have?
Right. Ooh, manipulation, cutting the strings of control. This one, this was a very difficult read for me.
Yeah.
Because I've heard of manipulation, but, didn't really know what it meant. Well, I knew what it meant, but, just didn't think that it applied to me. So this book, I like it because it talks about where manipulation started, which it basically started in the garden with Adam and Eve and the serpent, and how the serpent really kind of twisted what God said in his word and made her doubt what God really said.
Right.
So I just thought that was very interesting that we go all the way back to the garden with manipulation. And this is something that is not of God, because this is what the enemy does to get Eve to, bite the apple. And we know what happened. So in addition to that, the author, June Hunt, goes and gives examples from the Bible. I didn't define manipulation. Sorry. I got ahead of myself. So, to manipulate is to unduly restrain, restrict, or rule in a relationship by use of deception. To manipulate is to suppress or oppress a person by subversive, overt, or covert tactics. To manipulate is to have excessive, cunning control. So cunning, we see in the Bible how the enemy was very cunning in making Eve doubt what the Lord said. Another thing that this one did was it gave examples in the Bible where manipulation was prevalent with Abraham and Sarai, and Sarah and Abraham, and Laban and Jacob. So it gives examples about manipulation, so that the reader understands what manipulation is. So for me, it goes into spiritual manipulation, which I thought was interesting because it talks about how manipulation has been an issue in church for as long as church has been around.
Absolutely.
And it says for spiritual manipulation, manipulation involves the use of religious words or acts to manipulate someone for a personal gain or to achieve a goal, to achieve a personal agenda, thereby harming that person's walk with God. And at the core of spiritual manipulation is control of others. And it gives examples, which I thought were very interesting in terms of how this applies to different types of people. So it says that the religious leader who uses guilt to compel attendance, financial giving, or service, the religious husband who demands submission from his wife as a means of control, getting her to placate his selfishness, the religious parent who commands total, unquestioned compliance from children and uses harsh discipline without compassion or understanding. And then finally, the religious employer who micromanages employees, expecting them to work long hours without equitable monetary compensation. So yeah, that was a lot.
I thought about a few things there.
Mm-hmm.
You two, you want to go first?
No, you go.
I thought about some clients that have shared with me about a local church that they attend, and volunteerism is a big deal there, which it should be in
Mhm.
every ministry, honestly. However, when they are treated as if they are employees that get paychecks and the expectations are so high
Mhm.
and the requirements are so high with their time and things of that nature, it becomes manipulative, it becomes overbearing, it
Yes.
becomes depleting, and they don't want to go to church
Mhm.
because of the requirement in their volunteerism.
Mhm.
Yeah, I immediately thought about some of my clients with that and the requirement of things, and they're not even employees.
Mhm.
But then also, when I've been employed by ministries before, but on a different level. But other people that have worked with me, like the expectation is that you'll work whatever your hours are, but then you'll keep working like into the night if there's a service or something like that, but your hours just keep going.
Mhm.
And there's not additional compensation for the additional hours. You just keep working,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and expected that you will be there for whatever it is that's happening, but your hours are Monday through Friday or whatever your hours are.
Mhm.
But you just show up.
Show up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because you work here
Mhm.
and you are a member
Right.
and you volunteer and you serve or whatnot. So yeah. And then we were talking about the children. And I have gotten permission from my children. The manipulation of children. I'll speak specifically on one thing, and then I'll let you go, Tonyeka. When we separated, the conversation, and I actually just learned this in depth just a few weeks ago when I was asking for permission. My children shared with me some of the requirements that were placed on them in regards to us, the ex and I, reconciling, which was never an option for me after a certain point. And they were required to pray certain prayers. They were required to sing certain songs. They were required, or they couldn't say certain things. My oldest in particular would say, I don't think that that's what mom wants. And from that point, their relationship shifted drastically. And she almost became an opponent, if you will, because she had a differing view. So the manipulation in that, and then manipulating the younger one to believe that what was being said or what was being done was the right thing, but what I was doing or what I was saying was the wrong thing, to draw her in, and to want to be closer to him or whatever the goal was in that. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
It reminded me when Nikki read the portion about the example that June Hunt gives in giving. How many times, and I will generalize this, I've heard so many preachers say, y'all make comments like, y'all do everything else when it comes to trying to get people to give. And I just believe when it comes to that, especially over the pulpit, I just think only God can penetrate people's heart to give. And so the prayer work is at the house. The prayer work is not when you get the microphone.
Yeah.
And so your job is to pray and ask God to penetrate the hearts of the people, and then be kind to say, we're asking, or gently, but not y'all do everything else. That's kind of arrogant and kind of and cocky to me. And I love that she gave that example as being manipulative.
Absolutely.
And even attending church. You don't have to be manipulative. You don't have to make those type of comments, because that's what they are. But sometimes when I know what they are, but if it was said, then the person would get mad, but that's a manipulative comment to people. And it makes people feel bad if they don't give. And then not only that, what if they don't have it to give? So I always said, let's concentrate on those that thank the ones that do give. Don't focus on the people that don't give. You'll get more that way. God just
Yeah.
does it that way.
And if they
So-
don't have, then they feel less than,
Mhm.
Right.
you know, and
And
it's, what were you going to say?
No, that's true.
Yeah, there's a focus on their limitation
Mhm.
Yes.
opposed to encouraging and helping people to focus more on the areas of victory,
Mhm.
you know, because that gives you, pardon me, that gives you a drive, even if this one area might be limited,
Right.
but I know that I have victory over here
Right.
and I'm working on this area.
Mhm.
Well, let me use the motivation from this to work on this. But if we're focused only on my limitation, then I'll forget about this area
Mhm.
and I feel less than.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll say that even in some ministries, you can't serve if you don't tithe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Agreed.
So, y'all ready for the next book?
I think so.
Ooh. Okay, so I'll say for this one, verbal and emotional abuse. And first, I'll start out by saying, let me define emotional abuse.
Before you start, let me say this,
Yes.
that in this part, because when we start using heavy words like abuse, some people may be like, ooh, y'all gonna talk about that? We are. Because ministry only exacerbates what's present in you already,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When we were talking the other day, I think you said, Nikki, it's kind of like money.
Mm-hmm.
When people get more money
Mm-hmm.
than they have ever had or whatnot, it only highlights what's present inside of them. Ministry does that as well,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a level of power,
Right.
there's a level of authority, there's a level of control
Mm-hmm.
that is given in leadership, in ministry. So those things that are already present, spotlights
Mm-hmm.
are placed on them. If they are negative things, they're covered up because it does it on both ends, negative things and positive
Right.
things.
Right.
But it highlights it anyway. So I wanted to make sure that we said that before we enter into this one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'll define first so
Yes.
that everyone knows what we're talking about. So emotional abuse is any ongoing negative behavior used to control or hurt another person. Emotional abuse ranges from consistent indifference to continual belittling of character. So for me, I dealt with manipulation and control in my marriage. Verbal abuse is, the author says this about verbal abuse: it injures the feelings of others with reviling, insulting, or contemptuous words. She also says that verbal abuse often seeks to injure the reputation of others using tactics such as backbiting, barbs, or belittling talk, with strategies such as slander, slurs, and lies. So those are the examples or the definitions that are given for emotional and verbal abuse.
Will you read emotional abuse one more time?
Sure. Emotional abuse is any ongoing negative behavior used to control or hurt another person. Emotional abuse ranges from consistent indifference to continual belittling of character.
And I wanted you to read that again because emotional abuse gets squashed down, it gets minimized. Clearly, when we hear the word abuse, what's the first thing you think about, Tonyeka?
Physical.
Yeah.
Physical. Yeah. Yeah. We think about someone having bruises or broken bones or, you know, being slapped or hit or punched or anything of that nature. I say this often and I tend to get pushed back at times until it settles in. But I fully believe that emotional abuse has a greater weight or magnitude on the life of a person than others do. Because with physical abuse, bones can heal, bruises can go away. Emotional abuse, did I say physical when I just said that? Physical abuse, bones,
think
and okay. got caught up in my words. But emotional abuse lasts. You don't forget what it is that people said to you.
Yeah.
You don't forget how people treated you.
Mhm.
You don't forget those situations and circumstances. You remember those things. Also, when there is physical abuse, you remember those things too. You remember the actions, but the bruises and the broken bones heal. But the emotional aspect of that remains.
Right.
That's why I say that emotional abuse is far more damaging than the others. But, okay, go ahead.
And I didn't even know what emotional abuse was prior to being introduced to it in therapy. When I was in therapy, I still am in therapy. This is just earlier on. My therapist invited me to a session outside of our normal sessions, and she said, "I'm just going to warn you, the women here have all survived different types of abuse." Okay, so I go, and it was heavy, and then the next time I went again. So then I asked in our sessions, why do you want me to come? I really don't feel like I have anything in common with these ladies. And she says, "Sweetie, you were in an abusive relationship." I said, "Who?" She said, "You." I said, "You who?" She's like, "You, Nikki, you were in an abusive relationship." I said, because I'm thinking physical.
Of course.
She said emotional, spiritual, and verbal. And I'm like, shut the front door.
Yeah.
Who would have ever known that? And so then she had me read this book. And I said, "June Hunt, I'm going to start charging you rent because I know you living up in my house." Because, how else would these things be on these pages about me? How would she know
How
that?
would she know that? Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll just speak a little bit on what it looks like for emotional brainwashing, isolation, depriving you of all outside sources of emotional and social support, induced exhaustion, keeping you up late, interrupting your sleep, causing sleep deprivation, wearing you down physically or emotionally, ignoring, withdrawing emotional support, but later denying the withdrawal, forgetting, intentionally failing to keep promises and agreements, exploiting, using you or someone else close to you for selfish interest or gain. And I'll say specifically for me with the induced exhaustion, because my son's father had trouble sleeping. And so there would be lots of nights when we would be asleep in the same bed, and he would be on his phone at like crazy hours, at night. And then how you scroll on social media and then this video comes on and it's really loud and he would startle me awake. And I bought him several pairs of headphones because, had to find the pair that he liked. And then, so I found a pair that he liked and then I bought several pairs because he would lose things often. And then sometimes he would wear them or use them and sometimes he wouldn't. And so now you've startled me awake. Now I'm trying to go back to sleep and it's hard for me to do that.
Yeah.
And then there would even be times when he would study and he would choose to study in the bedroom, in the bed. And he had a whole office, it was just right there. And he would study, but in order for me to go to sleep, the lights are on. So I have to put a pillow over my head to go to sleep.
Wow.
When you could just really go to another room. So that was a challenge. Also, June Hunt talks about verbal and nonverbal abuse. And I had no idea there was such a thing as nonverbal. I was kind of aware of the verbal, but again, I think of name calling or yelling, and these things are not those. So I just want to share a couple. So under verbal abuse, she mentions accusing, blame shifting, brainwashing, breaking promises, bullying, controlling conversations, demanding false confessions, denying that abuse ever occurred, destroying credibility, dictating orders, humiliating publicly, insulting, playing verbal mind games, reality switching, shaming publicly, slandering, undermining other relationships, using words as a way to deceive. And then under nonverbal, she has abandoning the family, acting deceptively, changing rules or expectations continually, failing to validate feelings, giving excessive gifts to manipulate, giving unsolicited help to manipulate, ignoring, interrupting another's sleep, making unwanted visits, manipulating children, prohibiting another's decision making, prohibiting the positive friendships of others, refusing to leave when asked, withdrawing emotionally, and withholding finances.
You got something with that,
Yeah.
T? You sure? Okay. I remember when I moved from our home to the first home that the girls and I lived in. It was just a house that we leased. I was always so afraid that he would just show up, you know. And then not that there was ever any physical abuse or anything. We never dealt with any of that. But I was always afraid that he would just show up, and then I would have to encounter him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Just a conversation. I just dreaded conversations because they could be long and drawn out, and him being repetitive, and you know, just whatever. Yeah, that made me think of that. I want to go back to the manipulation book, because I have to say something that I learned about me that I did. The Lord told me this. He showed me that I was manipulative. And I was like, hold on, because I'm thinking that. And I was like, God, I don't manipulate. And then he showed me certain things that I would do in order to get us to the place that I knew that the Lord wanted us to be at, right? Like, I knew that he would want us to do this certain thing. So I would try to maneuver things around us so that we would have to do whatever was necessary to get to that place, if you will. I was like, can we come up with another word though? Because I wasn't doing anything to harm anybody, but it was still me making shifts and turns and trying to make something happen, opposed to just letting it be what it was, you know? And every time I think about that, I just go, ugh, I hate that, you know, because I definitely did that, because I always wanted us to be at the place that God wanted us to be. And I was like, okay, well, let me try this, and maybe he'll agree to this, you know? And I knew that I was, you know, kind of skirting, you know, to make things happen. But back to the emotional abuse, I think about that
Natalie,
again.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Before we move on with that, when Nikki was reading that some of the things that she said, because I was guilty of that as well. The word itself is hard. You're like, I didn't do that. But that's one of the regrets that I have is instead of being entangled into all of it and trying to make it work and using manipulation, you know, in order to do this and do that, I wish that I would have just said, this is it.
Yeah.
Because you find yourself in this entanglement.
And you find yourself doing stuff that's not you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like you throw sand in my eyes, I'm throwing it back in yours. It's like, when does it end? And that's what I am guilty of. And that is my regret.
Yeah.
I should have stopped years, you know, before, because he wasn't going to change. He still didn't change, which prompted me to leave. So,
but you finally left.
I finally left.
Yeah, you finally left. Even after all of the things and the things that, and I guess that's something that we need to say. I think we've said it in other shows, but just to be clear, we are not like innocent Yeah. In everything that has transpired.
Right.
And I'm not
Mhm.
innocent in everything that's transpired in our relationship. And the same thing is true in regards to the things that you experienced before. It's exacerbated,
Mhm.
So the insecurities or whatever may have been present before, when you start experiencing certain things, those things can rise up, especially when you are trying to defend yourself or feel like you have
Yes.
to
Right.
defend yourself, whether it's against them or what you see is definitely happening or you feel like it's happening, against you. That can rise up, even if it's like a timidity. You can shrink back even further than what you were shrunken before.
Right.
So it can be any of those things. So yeah, I just wanted to say that again. That we are not void of responsibility
Right.
in a lot of the things that happened. However, we are definitely victims, and I hate using that word, but it's so true. We're victims of emotional abuse, victims of manipulation, which is an emotional abuse, victims of control and verbal abuse and all of the things. So yeah. Okay, what else you got, Nikki?
Okay, so for time's sake, I'm not going to go through this. I only have one thing to mention from here, but this one, Why Does He Do That? This is Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men by Lundy Bancroft. He talks about, this one mainly focuses on abuse. So, but I wanted to shed light or show light at the end of the tunnel, which is forgiveness.
Yes.
And
Ooh, Jesus.
ooh, let me tell you.
That road, that forgiveness road.
Listen,
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to my friend Lady KT for encouraging me to do this.
Yeah.
So with this book, picked it up, put it down, picked it up, put it down many, many times, and she challenged me, you need to work on forgiveness.
Yeah.
So just real quickly, definition, forgiveness means dismissing a debt. So that's in a nutshell what it means. For me, forgiveness required releasing. So I had to release the right to hear I'm sorry, release the right to be bitter, release the right to get even. I had to forgive, which is to extend mercy. To forgive is to give a gift of grace. To forgive is to set the offender free. So for me, and this is how I know June Hunt was living in my house, because it says in order for me to forgive him, he had to change. That was my requirement, because that was my requirement for my son's father. He had to change.
Yeah.
So the thought is, well, what if he never changes? Do you never forgive?
Yeah.
Well, no, absolutely not, because we want to be like Christ, right? So moving forward with this forgiveness, this book mentions that forgiveness is not reconciliation, which I think is very important to understand. Just because you forgive doesn't mean that you and the offender are, cool or friends or even back in relationship or fellowship. The other thing I wanted to point out is this book talks about the unforgiving heart versus a forgiving heart. Jesus, are you serious? So just really quickly, the unforgiving heart is judgmental, condemned, merciless, contemptuous, resentful, envious, vengeful, retaliatory, maligning, slander, prideful, haughtiness, profane, bitterness, complaining, resistance, impatient, annoyance, bitter, negativity. And then this is what really got me. Because of unforgiveness, the offended person becomes spiritually dry, trying to feel connected with God, but lacking spiritual growth. As a direct result of unforgiveness, the offender's prayer life is blocked.
I experienced that.
Wow. Me too. And finally, I want to say this. Okay, hurry up, Nikki. So this book talks about how you truly forgive. And this is what took me out as I'm reading this book, because it asks you how do you handle the hook. So the author, June Hunt, instructs you to make a list of every offense, every single offense. And my list is it's lengthy. I'm still writing it. And then it asks the question. Imagine right now a hook is attached to your collarbone. Then imagine all the pain attached to the hook as a result of the wrong that was done to you. Ask yourself, do I really want to carry all that pain with me for the rest of my life? The Lord wants you to take the pain from the past and release it into his hands. Then take the one who offended you off your emotional hook and place your offender onto God's hook. The Lord knows how to deal with your offender in his time and in his way. God says, it is mine to avenge, I will repay.
Yeah.
And in closing, just quickly, the biggest takeaway for forgiveness for me was God forgave and forgives me. So who am I not to forgive?
Yeah.
That's good.
That's good.
That what you just said reminds me of one of the things that my therapist always tells me, Tonyeka, take it and put it in that black trash bag and leave it at the dumpster. She said, and when you leave it, you're leaving it to Jesus. She said, you're placing it at Jesus's feet and walking away. So
I like the trash bag analogy because you are placing the offense in the trash
the
bag.
offense in the trash bag.
Not the person.
Not the
Right.
person.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because what they did was trash.
Right. That part.
It was.
Yes.
But they themselves are not.
Right.
Trash.
And they are God's,
Yes.
you know.
Absolutely.
Oh, and I know I shared before in regards to my journey to forgiveness, in that when my therapist was like, you know, have you forgiven him? And I was like, hell no. You know, have you prayed for him? Hell no. You know, because I was angry and I wanted to hold on to my anger because I felt like I wanted to hold on to my anger and the unforgiveness because I felt like that gave me some sense of control in this space, you know, where I wasn't being manipulated or abused anymore.
Right.
Now I have this, you know, and you don't get to do anything to me because I can hate you and I cannot forgive you and I am fine. I mean, and my nails were dug in and my feet were too, you know, but then realizing, girl, you still being controlled, you know, by this unforgiveness now.
Right.
You know? So then having to learn to walk down that journey, and it was a journey. You know, it wasn't just, oh, I thought about it and there it was. That's just not how it happened for me.
Right.
I needed to process through that. And then when things kept happening, like you were saying, you're still adding to the list because things keep happening.
Oh my God.
You know, so you add to the list. You're like, God, help me to forgive this.
Right.
You know, and then that thing takes a process on its own. So yeah, those were good. Those were good.
And we definitely need Jesus for this forgiveness process.
Absolutely.
Definitely need Jesus.
Yeah, because we don't want to do it on our own.
I can't do it on my own. I'm incapable.
Yeah. And honestly, for me, I didn't want to do it on my own. It was only because of Jesus
Right.
that I got to a point of forgiveness, and I had a heart of forgiveness.
Right.
Because I did not want to forgive because I wanted him to suffer. I did. You know, I wanted him to feel the pain that I felt.
Right.
Yeah. So it was Jesus alone.
Yep.
Okay. Well, how do we close this?
No.
What do you say?
What do you say? If you are experiencing any of those things, like some of the things that we talked about today, and I think you even said, Nikki, that you didn't even know that you were experiencing.
Right.
You know, some of those things when you don't have definition, but you heard some things today that spoke to what you are facing. Let's make it a simple thing. Simply go get that book and read the book, you know, so that you can have a better understanding. Because you might hear it today and say, that kind of sounds similar, you know, to my life, but nah, that's not really it. But go get the book. They're very inexpensive. June Hunt is her name. Restoring, what's her ministry?
Hope for the Heart.
Hope for the Heart.
Hope for the Heart.
go to her ministry, get the book there, or maybe like one of the Christian thrift books. I'm not sending you to the other website. I'm not gonna do it. But if you just go to her website, then you can get them there. They're very small books, but power packed. So you can have a better understanding of what all of these things are and what might be true in your life. We pray that it's not,
Right.
but it very well may be true for you. And you may be but you may be experiencing some of those things, but it may not be the whole thing. That could be worked on. You know, maybe it just needs to be identified first. So we just want to encourage you in that. Yeah, thank you for bringing those today, Nikki.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and sharing today. Anything else, ladies? We good?
We're good.
Okay. Thank you guys for watching Successful.
Beautiful.
And
We appreciate your support. And remember, as you are watching this show, there's a subscribe button.
Please, ma'am.
It's right
Sir.
there.
Yes.
Just press that.
Press it.
Okay. We appreciate you. Have an amazing day. Bye. The content shared on this podcast is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. While one of our hosts is a licensed professional counselor, the information provided here does not constitute a therapeutic relationship, nor is it a substitute for individualized mental health treatment or diagnosis. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-therapist relationship between you and our hosts. Any stories, examples, or discussions are either fictional, generalized, or used with permission for illustrative purposes and should not be taken as personalized therapeutic guidance. If you are in need of mental health support, we encourage you to consult with a licensed mental health professional in your area. If you are in crisis or experiencing a mental health emergency, please contact 911, your local crisis line, or 988, the National Suicide Crisis Lifeline. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.